Good morning to all. Welcome to the next session on microeconomics. And this is a very, very important session because we are going to speak about the most important chapter called as the theory of consumer behavior. Now moving on, this chapter is going to be very interesting. Why? Because we're going to talk about that same individual whom we were speaking about in the first unit, in the introduction chapter. In that, we had spoken about the consumer, his preferences, his behavior, and how was he taking it forward in terms of microeconomics. Now, taking a deeper dive into the session, we are going to talk about these three important factors. Factor number one, consumer behavior. Factor number two, his preferences. And factor number three, the problem of choice. So what is consumer behavior all about? If I am a consumer, I would like to have my own preferences. I would like to have my own factors of how I buy something, how I sell something, what do I need for my living lifestyle, and what are the factors that would matter to me on a day-to-day basis. So my behavior is all about my needs and wants. So it's very, very important that we focus on this word, needs and wants. Next, the preferences. The word preferences, I would like to substitute with the word called as choice. Why choice is very, very important. Everybody will not stick to the same variety or the same factor. They have their own preferences, they have their own ideologies, they have their own factors altogether. Somebody might like green color, somebody might like blue, somebody might like rice, somebody might like wheat. So preferences of the consumers are going to be a very, very important factor that we are going to talk about. Coming to the problem of choice. The next factor called as problem of choice. Choice itself is a problem in our country. Why I would like to emphasize upon on this. Choice is not something that is easily available to all of us. We have a lot of ideas. We have a lot of opinions. We want to apply this in our day-to-day life. We want to see that we get the best on the choices that we make. But unfortunately, the biggest problem or the challenge is that the choice is not available in plenty. The choice is limited. The choice becomes restricted in many activities. So what happens again is that you need to understand the problem of choice is a very, very limited factor. So people tend to make lot number of choices. They want to make plan A, plan B, C, D, and they keep on making different kinds of choices. At least one among that choice will come into the factor and will be able to satisfy them. So that's why problem of choice is a very important factor in economics because you don't get plenty of options. You need to do with the limited factor on which you are going forward. Now, moving on to the next slide, we're going to talk about the word called utility. This is a very, very, very important concept when it comes to theory of consumer behavior. Why? Utility means that not just the utilization value, but it is all about the first important concept, want satisfying capacity. This word is very, very important when it comes to economics. Want satisfying capacity. What is the capacity of the consumer to satisfy himself? He might be rich, he might be poor, he might be medium, or he might be belong to any section or any class of the society. But when he goes in to apply a particular value, when he goes in to apply a particular factor altogether, there is something called as the want satisfying capacity. What is that product? What is that factor that really satisfies his want? So there is a purchasing power parity that comes inside. There is a capacity of the consumer that makes him feel that yes, I have done to my maximum. I am completely satisfied. So that want satisfying capacity talks very, very importantly about the consumer and the utility value. Now, Greater levels. Why do I use this word greater levels? Because in utility, higher the levels of satisfaction, the consumer also gets excited. The consumer also gets highly satisfied. Now, for example, in the case of theory of consumer behavior, when I'm able to purchase a Maruti car, I'm happy because I've got my first four-wheeler. The next 2 or 3 years later, I'm going to expand myself or exceed myself to the next version. Let's say I go and buy a Toyota car, I'm more happy because I am exceeding my want level. After 4 or 5 years later, I move to a Mercedes Benz. After 5 or 10 years, I go to a Lamborghini. Now, what I'm trying to do here is that my wants are increasing and I'm able to satisfy that want at each and every stage. That is where utility value comes into picture. So, it is very, very important for all of us to understand greater levels. Higher the level of satisfaction, the consumer starts going up on the greater level altogether. Next, subjective. Now, this word is also important when it comes to utility. Why? Because everybody will not have the same kind of want. Everybody will not have a similar side of life. For somebody, the utility might be at a limited level. For somebody, the utility might be at a higher level altogether. So, it is a subjective matter. It is not something that can be applied to all as a constant law or a factor. It depends. If you are happy with what you have today, you might feel that that's my utility level. I don't want to expand. I don't want to keep going forward. But if you feel that no, I am not happy at the current level, I want to expand myself, I want to exceed myself, then the utility value will also keep on changing. So, 3 important factors that we need to learn about utility. It is the want satisfying capacity. So, you have the capacity to satisfy yourself as a consumer. Higher the levels, higher the satisfaction. So, the more and more you exceed, you feel happier, and it's a subjective matter. It depends on you only. You are not being forced. You cannot be compared. You cannot be said that you are like the others. It is a subjective matter. It's an exclusive matter for every single consumer in this country. Going forward, we are going to talk about the types of utility. This is very, very important again. What are the types of utility? We have spoken about utility itself as a concept. So, what are the types that are involved there? The first one is called as cardinal. The second one is called as ordinal. Now, the words are quite new to us when we come to microeconomics, because this is the first time that you might be hearing about the word cardinal and ordinal. But please keep in mind, these 2 words are very important, because from the exam standpoint and also from the conceptual knowledge standpoint, cardinal utility and ordinal utility are very, very important. Now, how do I move forward in terms of understanding cardinal and ordinal? Now, cardinal itself means that it is concentrated on numbers, which means we are now going to talk about the quantitative factor. Now, it's very, very important for us to understand in life, many a times we feel happy with numbers, because numbers make a great difference in most of our life. When anybody asks you this question, how many friends do you have? So you go ahead and give a number. You say, I have 100 friends, 200, 300. Automatically, the number makes a difference in others' life. When people come and ask you, what is the total number of cars you have? What is the total number of houses you have? Or how many different types of clothes you have? Moment you throw a larger number, people look at you with surprise. People look at you with a different inspiration altogether. So cardinal utility is all about that number game. Why? Because every time as the number increases, as the length starts broadening, the breadth starts going on the bigger face altogether, people are amazed. People want that. People go back and say that more I am satisfied. People do not want to stick to that lower numbers. They are people who believe that quantitatively is very, very important rather than qualitatively. So I use the word quantitatively very, very particular here. More the numbers, more the better I feel altogether. So that's why going back to the word cardinal, I mean to say that they are number oriented. More the numbers, then automatically that makes me feel happy. So all the cardinal utility will start dealing with your daily functionality. It might be about your height, it might be about your weight, it might be about the number of pens you have, number of cars, number of houses, friends, whichever, that can be quantitatively satisfied. Now, moving forward, what is ordinal, sir? What is the difference between now cardinal and ordinal? Ordinal means priority. This word is also very, very important to us as we start understanding the word or the concept called as ordinal. Ordinarily or on a given basis, given point of time, what is that matters you the most? How do you prioritize your needs, your wants, your satisfaction? So the moment I use the word ordinal, I am trying to talk about the word called as priority. So this becomes very, very important for all of us to understand. What is that matters to me the most? Not everything in the life comes to me at the same phase. Not everything comes to me with the same importance. For certain people, education is the topmost priority. For certain people, health is the topmost priority. For certain people, wealth is the topmost priority. So what are you prioritizing yourself? Based on the priority, based on that value, we will go into the ordinal utility. So on the factors of both these utility, there is a difference. There are factors on which people will get satisfied and people will use that satisfaction at different levels. Moving forward, I would like to represent both these things in order to make you understand much more clear using a small diagram. And that diagram here clearly indicates when I say cardinal, that means we are showing some numbers. It might be starting with a single digit or it might be a 3-digit or a 2-digit, whatever is that, but that deals with numbers. You are able to see that moment the word cardinal comes inside, it is all about the numbers. It might be a single, it might be double digits, it might be talking about millions or it might be talking about billions, but ultimately it is quantitative factors. They are dealing with numbers. Moment I use the word ordinal, priorities. I keep underlining this word priority because even in the examination standpoint, the word that you need to keep in your mind, the key factor, the key word is priority. So when they ask you what is ordinal utility, you need to keep in your mind that ordinal utility is all about priority. So you need to list down in your life what are the topmost priorities you have as a consumer and you will go according to that. So that's why this ordinal utility and cardinal utility will play a greater role when it comes to theory of consumer behavior. Moving forward. Now we are going to talk about utility concepts. Now utility, when you start getting deeper into it, it is a lot more fascinating, lot more interesting altogether. Why is it? Because utility, when I just say it's a want satisfying capacity, people come back and ask you this question, what next? Yes, I am satisfied with my wants. Probably I've got all the things that I have wished for in my life. I am settled. But after then, what? Where should I take this utility to the next level? So we have 3 different types of utility that you can see on the board. One is the total utility. The second one is called as the marginal utility. And the third one is called as the average utility. Now we will look into each one of these concepts in depth. Now, the moment I say total utility, the word itself is quite easy to understand. Total utility Because when I say total, that means in composition of all, when I'm putting everything together. So that is total. Total utility means it is the combination of all utility factors. So that utility factor might be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it keeps on going. So but when I add all the values and put it together in a box, in a total sum value, I would call that as total utility. So total utility is the sum of all utilities. You might have got satisfaction at different levels, at different places, at different situations altogether. When you sum all the utilities together, you will get the total utility value. Now to give an example there, now let's say that I have achieved a utility level by consuming a particular variety of food. Let's say that level was 5. And if I start consuming some other food, the same variety, if I go ahead, I get another utility value as 6. Like this, if I keep on adding up, automatically at a point, I get a total utility. So I would have got different experiences, different levels of satisfaction altogether. Now, when I come down to marginal utility, but before even we step to the marginal, you need to immediately, the word total, immediately we move to average, because total and average are somewhere related to each other. What is this average utility? Now you would have understood total utility, the sum of all utilities put together. Divide that sum of all utilities by the n value. What is n stands here? The number of items. Moment you put the n value, the total number of items, you will automatically land up to the average. So the sum total divided by the number of items will give you the average. On an average basis, I have been experiencing a satisfaction level, let's say 7 out of 10. 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10. That value, what you are quoting in the market, that value, what you are quoting in your life is called as the average utility. Why is that an average? Sir, average is something that happens in most of our time where we just take an overall figure or an overall value. Now that is a composite value. So you would just try to understand at one point, on an average, on an overall basis, what mark or what level or what rank you would give. That is what you will try to understand as an average utility. Now moving forward from there, we start coming towards marginal utility. Now this is slightly a different concept altogether. Why? Marginal, the word itself is very, very important for us. What is that margin? Every time when we write a letter, when we write a composition, when we write something, we have always been told by our teachers, leave some margin, leave some space. Similarly, when it comes to economics, when it comes to business, when it comes to management, the concept of margin is very, very important. Margin is that one extra value. What is that one extra? Why? Because every time the consumer will try to see that what is that he is getting extra. What is that benefit that he is getting when compared to A or B or C? If I'm going to buy 10 cups of ice cream and the shopkeeper gives me an offer saying that buy 10 and get 2 free, automatically those 2 cups are my marginal utility, because I am getting satisfaction at a higher level more than the expected. What is that extra bit that you are getting will start getting into the marginal utility, and this matters a lot in the day-to-day life, because that's why whenever you go to any of the retail stores or supermarkets, you will be seeing that buy 1 get 1 free, buy 2 get 1 free. All the offers are based on marginal utility. You are going to pay for 2 but you are going to get 3. And that's the mindset, that's the psychological process that goes inside when we are going to talk about marginal utility. That one extra, that one element that is going to make a difference in the minds of the consumer is definitely going to move towards the marginal utility concept. Now moving forward, Consumer equilibrium. This is a word that we need to learn in our day-to-day life. Equilibrium. The word is very, very simple. It's very, very important, and that matters a lot when it comes to the microeconomics. Equilibrium means somewhere striking a balance. It's like a bridge. When you stand in the middle of the bridge and when you start looking at the either sides, you feel the distance is common. It's the same distance. It's an equidistant zone altogether. Similarly, in equilibrium, this is the point where the consumer balances himself. He is satisfied. He reaches a level of satisfaction and says that, yes, I have achieved what I wanted to. So similarly, when we come here to this word equilibrium, we need to understand what are the core factors that are involved. The first one, level of consumption. Second one, maximum satisfaction. And the third one, multiple levels. Now let's go word by word to understand what is the consumer equilibrium all about. Now, level of consumption. How much do you consume? When anybody asks you this question, it's quite abstract. Why? Because the level of consumption depends upon the factor or depends on the originality of what we are talking about. Now, if I'm going to ask you this question in terms of food, if I'm going to ask you this question in terms of petrol, I'm going to ask you this question in terms of spending on luxury goods, or if I'm going to ask you this question in terms of spending towards travel or any other factor, the levels of consumption will keep on changing. So the levels of consumption will actually matter a lot for the people here. The consumer has to feel extremely happy. Moment he consumes more, moment he starts utilizing his capacity to the best level possible, his consumption factors start growing up, automatically the consumer starts getting happier. So that's why even in our economic system, environment, we always emphasize upon the factor that the consumption. Higher the levels of consumption of the citizens in a country, the GDP will also keep on growing, the growth will happen, and people will also start feeling that the economy is moving forward. So that is why in a populated country like India, levels of consumption will matter a lot. This is very, very important for all of us to understand. Higher the levels of consumptions, higher the utility value, the equilibrium can be reached faster. Next, maximum satisfaction. The word satisfaction itself is quite complicated to understand. But then when I add one more word to it, maximum satisfaction, it becomes even more challenging. Why? How can I reach satisfaction? That's very, very important. As a consumer, the word satisfaction cannot be applied to me easily. I never get satisfied. Just to give you an example, when we go to any of the shopping malls and when we go inside an electronic shop, especially let's say when we look at digital equipments or consumer goods, we are never satisfied by just looking at them. We just want to keep on going. I feel that today this particular brand is good, then I will feel a Y brand is good, a Z brand is good, an A brand is good. I just keep on moving from window to window. I am not getting satisfied at all because somewhere at the corner of my mind, I am still feeling that satisfaction has not touched me. That has not come inside me. So what should I do? Will I keep on shopping? Will I keep on going forward? Will I keep on going to the end where I would get that word satisfaction? But yes, the answer to that question is that consumer will keep on seeking the options of satisfaction. He will not stop. He will just not stop, and that is the reason why you see in the markets every day there is some or the other new innovation. We are not just happy with the basic model of the cell phone that first came. Today we have moved ourselves to leaps and bounds in terms of the mobile technology, but still the consumer is not happy. He still feels that there is a lot of things to be done, so he keeps on moving forward. So maximum level of satisfaction can be attained only when the consumer feels that yes, he is satisfied. He has reached that level where he has got what he wanted. Now, multiple levels. This is a multiple level story. Why? Because Certain consumers can get that satisfaction at the initial level. I go to 1 or 2 shops, I'm happy. I was able to get what I want within my budget, within my thing, so I'm satisfied. Let me not shop going forward. I'll just go back home. But there are people who will say that no, I am not satisfied with this mall. I am not satisfied with this shop. I need to go to 10 more shops. I need to go to 10 more locations, 10 more units. See what is the best. I don't mind seeing it across the geography. So which means my consumer equilibrium cannot be attained in a single level, multiple levels. For different people, different level, different thought process. So attaining the equilibrium is not that easy. You need to see these 3 factors. The consumption factor, the satisfaction factor, and the multiple level factor, and then at a particular point, you attain the consumer equilibrium. Now, moving forward, coming on to the slide called as Indifference Curve, it is very, very important for us to understand what is this indifference curve. Indifference curve is nothing but the graph that shows the combination of 2 bundles or 2 different products that the consumer needs or the consumer wants at any given point of time. Why? Because that particular bundle or that particular choice is what the consumer will not give upon. He is happy with that. He does not want to come out of that scenario. So nothing else will make any difference in his life. He wants to stick to that option. He wants to stick to that point where he wants to say that that is where I am satisfied. That is where I am getting my maximum satisfaction altogether. Following which we have the budget line. The budget line is something that will try to make us understand about what are the factors, what are the concepts that would make us or that would try to get in terms of buying or selling a particular product. Now, a budget line is something where we would try to understand the combination of 2 goods. Why this is very, very important? The budget line is something where we would see that the factors of how the consumer is completely getting satisfied. His income is limited. The budget is also limited there. The budget line, it tells that this is the amount that you can spend today. So that is where the budget line actually stands in terms of making the consumer feel the factor that whatever happens, whatever he purchases has to be purchased within that limited value only. He cannot go and expand his budget. He cannot keep on increasing his budget as and when he wants. So his budget is completely limited. That budget line will tell buy the products only within this range. That's why budget line is very, very important for us. Moving forward, marginal rate of substitution. Now, if you can substitute a product with another product, we are talking about the concept called as marginal rate of substitution. What is very important here, if you can see that there are 2 products, product 1 and product 2. We are going to talk about similar values. If they are not equal, but we will try to see equivalent factors. So when we talk about marginal rate of substitution, we try to see that can we substitute one product with the other product so that I get the same level of satisfaction. Moving forward, to explain this marginal rate of substitution, let me go into the factor called as consumption. Moment a consumer starts consuming a particular variety of food more and more, automatically what happens? There is a decline in the marginal utility, which means to say that now what is happening? Moment you start consuming more and more in terms of food, in terms of the factors, then what happens? Your utility value will start decreasing. Initially, you will be happy with 1 cup of ice cream, 2 cups, 3, but after the 4th cup, you will feel that I am satisfied, I am done, I don't want to do it again. So automatically, your utility levels will start coming down. There is a decline in the utility. The more you consume, the lesser the marginal utility value. Moving forward, Demand. Demand is the most important factor. This is the key word of microeconomics. We had spoken about the word called as supply and demand some time back. But today we are going to see what is this demand function altogether. Demand is defined as the want or desire combined with the purchasing power combined to get that particular goods or services. So I have a demand factor in my mind, but can I satisfy the demand what market is throwing at me? That can be possible only if there is a purchasing power capacity there. I have to have the necessary money, the buying power with me to satisfy my want or desire in terms of goods and services. If I don't get it, I will not be able to satisfy my demand. So demand cannot be just satisfied by a thought process. It requires the purchasing capacity. It requires the factors through which you can buy that necessary goods altogether. Moving forward. What are the constituents of demand? Price, income, preferences, prices of related good. So demand is a combination of 4 factors. The price of the good, the income of the consumer, price of the related good, and the preferences what the consumer has. This is a combination factor. You cannot say demand is a one-sided factor. You need to put all these factors together to understand the demand functionality. If the price is too high, the income is too low, or the preferences are not there, or the prices of related goods are better, automatically there will be a shift in the demand. So that's why when we go to the demand function altogether, before going to the demand function, let's understand the law of demand and then get into the demand function. The law of demand states that the quantity demanded and the price of the commodity are inversely proportional. So whenever we go to the market, we find that if the price of a particular good is on the higher side, then the quantity demanded for that good will be lower. Moment the price comes down, the quantity will also be on the higher side. So they are inversely proportional. This factor is very, very important for us. Why? Because if the price increases, the consumer will automatically decline on his quantity. Price decreases, the consumer will increase his consumption factor. So that is graphically represented here. Higher the price, lesser the quantity. Lower the price, higher the quantity. So this factor is very, very important, and this is also an important question when it comes to the exam. The law of demand. Price and quantity being inversely proportional. Next, the demand function, what we were talking about. Consumer preference and level of demand will constitute the demand function. There is a choice in the mind of the consumer. The consumer says that today my preference is towards a particular brand called as X. Now for that particular brand X, what is the level of demand? Because he is not the only person. There are millions and millions of people living in this world. Automatically, when the demand for that particular good with the preference starts moving up, the demand function for that product is set in the market. So most of the companies always think about these 2 factors. What is a preference? That's the product becomes the natural choice for the consumer. Will the consumer think that this is what I exactly want? Automatically, when the choice is made, the levels of demand towards that product will start increasing. There will be a lot of accumulation altogether, preference altogether, functionality altogether, which will constitute the final demand function for that particular product. Moving forward, exceptions to the law. Every law that is being created in this world comes with an exception. That is the law of nature, which I would put together. Now, what are the exceptions for the law of demand? For the law of demand during emergencies and for given goods. Let's try to understand The current scenario which our country is going through, in fact the entire globe is going through, there is a lot of emergency. People are not able to get their basic needs, they are not able to satisfy their basic wants, they are not able to live a proper life. So in this condition, let's take the law of demand away. In emergencies, law of demand will not be applied. Similarly, given goods. Given goods are those goods which are necessity goods. On a daily basis, we consume them. So if the prices keep on increasing, even though the prices might shoot to a higher level than the normal level, the consumer is not going to stop consuming it. Suddenly, if the price of milk or price of rice goes up by 5 rupees or 10 rupees extra, but people will not give up on it. People will say that I need it for my day-to-day life. So all those kinds of the essential goods, the necessity goods, will be constituted in the given goods. So the given goods will be an exception to the law of demand. Moving forward. Elasticity of demand. This is a very, very important factor. The elasticity of demand is divided into two factors, income and price. As you see in the diagram, moment the word elasticity comes, we are talking about some flexibility. We are talking about some stretch altogether. What is that stretch? Now, when the income increases with respect to a good, there is a change. Either the consumption goes up or the consumption comes down. So automatically there is an elasticity function. A person who was earning 10,000 rupees per month suddenly starts earning double of it, say 20,000 from next month. So moment the income of the consumer goes up, there will be a change with respect to the demand of the product. Similarly, when there is a price fluctuation, increase or decrease of price related to the product, that is one which we need to keep in our minds always. Income or price always related to the product, there will be a shift in the demand. So that's where I'm going to use the word elasticity, which means there is a flexibility, there is some change that is happening. So we represent this factor using the function or symbol called as delta. Delta represents the change. Now if I say delta y, that means change in income. So that is why we are using this function called as elasticity. So delta y means change in income, delta p means change in price. So the change factor is represented by the word elasticity. Moving forward. Normal goods and inferior goods. Now people might ask you this question, sir, are there goods normal, supernormal, abnormal and all those factors? But then let's not get into that argument. Let's try to understand what are these normal and inferior goods. Normal goods are the goods which increase with the rise in income. So automatically when the income increases, you would like to increase your expenditure in terms of that products. So as the income increases, the consumption also increases with them. They are perfectly normal goods. Inferior goods means that when your income rises, the expenditure on those goods starts falling down. To give you a very simple example, moment man starts earning more and more money, he would like to spend it on luxury items. He would like to spend on the normal factors on a higher level altogether. He will buy more, he will try to increase his expenditure, but he will not try to spend his focus and time on those goods which are available at a cheaper price or which are available for a common man. Why? Because there is a psychological behavior that starts coming inside in normal versus inferior goods. The normal good says that when the income starts increasing, automatically the expenditure towards it will also start going up because you feel that you can spend more, you can consume more, so you want to throw money on the same factor again and again. Whereas in the inferior goods, you don't want to do it because you feel that it is already done, I don't want to invest more time there. Now, substitutes and complements, that's a very, very important factor. What is a complement? Complement is something like pen and ink. Pen and ink are complementary, they complement each other, they function together. How does a pen work? Because there is ink inside, we use the pen for writing. So pen and ink are complementary factors. They work hand in hand. Substitute. If A is not available, can I substitute it with B? So when I look at an example, coffee and tea. If coffee is not available, I can substitute it with tea. And if tea is not available, I can substitute it with coffee. So when A can replace B or when B can replace A, we call it as substitute. Moving forward, shift in demand curve. What are the shift factors that happen in demand curve? The shift happens because change in income, change in preferences, which makes the demand curve move up. If there is a change in income, if there is a change in preferences of the good, automatically the demand curve gets alterated. Higher or decrease in income, or there is a new choice that is coming up in the market, there will be a shift that is happening in the demand curve. So whenever we try to understand the demand curve concept, we have to keep in mind income and preferences altogether. Moving on. Coming on to the conclusion slide for today, we need to understand the 4 terms that are very important for this chapter. Point number 1, we are trying to understand the consumer behavior in total, which is a very important concept in microeconomics, followed by these 3 words: price, demand, and consumer behavior. Price is the most important factor that we are been learning in microeconomics, because that makes a lot of change in the market, that makes a lot of change towards the consumer perception altogether, because of which the demand also changes. So consumer behavior is a combination of price and demand. It's a combination of all factors put together to understand the psychology of consumer in depth. The third point, it addresses the different types of goods. We know that there are a variety of goods that are available in the market. Normal goods, inferior goods, substitutes, complements, given goods. There are a variety of goods. This chapter in particular tries to make you understand the different varieties of good. The names might be similar, but then economically speaking, the words, the terminology are being addressed in this particular chapter. Last but not the least, the factors that are related to consumption and satisfaction. These 2 words, again, please keep in mind, that's very, very important. Why? Because consumption and satisfaction makes everything when it comes to consumer behavior. More I consume, more I get satisfied, I move towards the equilibrium. So that means for a country to achieve the consumer equilibrium, satisfaction combined with consumption will lead to the growth of the economy. So it's very, very important that we see that the consumer is able to consume whatever he wants at the best price, at the best availability, and he needs to see that he attains satisfaction at the earliest level possible. With this, I would like to conclude the second chapter for today. Thank you for joining me, and I hope that if there are any questions or any queries, please do get back to me. Thank you once again.